Regard man as a mine, rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. Baha'u'llah.
What is the purpose of our lives? Abdu'l-Baha replied, to acquire virtues. We come from the earth. Why were we transferred from the mineral to the vegetable kingdom, from the plant to the animal kingdom? So that we may attain perfection in each of these kingdoms, that we may possess the best qualities of the mineral, that we may acquire the power of growing as in the plant, that we may be adorned with the instincts of the animal and possess the faculties of sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste, until from the animal kingdom we step into the world of humanity and are gifted with reason, the power of invention, and the forces of the spirit.
So this week, we're so happy to have Ms. Dara Feldman, and she'll be talking about virtues, a Baha'i perspective on the meaning of life. Dara Feldman is an award-winning educator, speaker, author, coach, and consultant. With passion and enthusiasm, she's delivered keynotes and facilitated workshops around the world. Along with her husband, Dave, she's the co-founder of the nonprofit Virtues Matter, serving a global network of educators, leaders, youth, and community members to uplift the best in themselves and others with strategies, experiences, and tools for restored well-being. Dara was a classroom teacher for 16 years, an instructional technology specialist for 5 years, and an instructional coach for 3 years. In addition, she was the director of curriculum development for PowerUP. Feldman was an expert consultant with the USDE's Web-Based Education Commission, where she helped write The Power of the Internet for Learning. She was also co-creator of the Early Childhood Technology Literacy Project, which was nominated by Steve Jobs of Apple and won the Computerworld Smithsonian Award in Education and Academia in 2000. Most recently, Feldman's current positions include ASCD Faculty Member, Restorative DC Coach, International Institute for Restorative Practices Instructor, Shepherd University Adjunct Professor, and Virtues Project Master Facilitator. Dara is grateful to be married to her best friend and to have 2 adult children who are both educators. So with that, I'll hand it off to Ms. Feldman.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good middle of the night, wherever you dedicated souls are connecting in from. It is truly a joy and an honor to be in virtual circle with you all, and I am truly humbled. Thank you to the Bahá'í family, to you all for your steadfast service, your generosity, hosting all of us every Saturday, and to you, everyone joining us, whether you're live or watching this on YouTube, for your generosity, time, and spirit, and curiosity coming together. So, even though this is not so much interactive, as a recovering kindergarten teacher, you know there's going to be some tests here. So here's your first pre-assessment. What part of God's light are you bringing to our gathering together today? Let's see. Are you bringing some joy? Maybe a little bit of kindness? How about some trust or generosity, perhaps? Forgiveness, compassion, you all get it. Those are the virtues, those universal positive qualities of character that we all have inside of us. We are born that way. And one of the reasons that I'm so excited to share with you a little bit of teaching today is because what I have discovered through my own personal investigation of truth, which is one of the tenets of the Baha'i faith, is that we were all created noble. Yes, all of us, you and even me. And so knowing that this personal investigation of truth is part of the Baha'i faith, here's this disclaimer. You never have to believe anything that I say, because part of it is from my lived experience. And you can always ask Dr. Google. Maybe that's not the best idea. But what I have done is created a Padlet of some perhaps getting started resources. And I know that we'll drop that into the chat box so that everybody can access it. And you can create your own adventure around the learning about the meaning of life. So for context today, I'm going to share with you some of my personal journey, because I'm a relatively young Baha'i. I'm younger than those wonderful souls who are providing service today. I'll be in Baha'i years 12 years old in May. And so I want to share my journey into the faith and what becoming a Baha'i has done for me, as well as teaching a little bit about some of the history and the foundational principles of the Baha'i faith, as I know there are many souls who are curious about that. And I'll be weaving in some quotes, and then at the end, leave a little bit of time for questions. So I hope you all are good with that and ready to get started. Here we go. So my prayer is that during our time together, you're going to find some comfort. You're going to tap into your own wisdom and your own insights, and that you will really, truly understand that our purpose for living this life, and perhaps you would agree, sometimes it's not so fun, a little bit of stress. Anybody else out there a little bit stressed, right? Is to acquire our virtues and to use them in service of others. So as many of you already know, the Baha'i faith is the most recent of the world's religion. It began in 1844 with the declaration of the Bab, and the Bab means the gate. He was the forerunner of Baha'u'llah, and the Bab's mission was to let people know that this prophet founder of a new world's religion would be coming. Baha'u'llah, the prophet founder of the Baha'i faith, declared his mission in 1863. So just anchor your minds and your hearts into what was happening here in the US around 1863 with President Lincoln and the Civil War, and soon to be, at least on paper, the abolishment of slavery. So a large part of the Baha'i faith, one of the tenets, is to get rid of all forms of prejudice. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Baha'is believe that God is one, that all religions are one, and that there is only one humanity. So from a religious perspective, it's like God is a light, and all of the different manifestations are like different lamps. And the social teachings are really the only thing that is different. So if you look back to Judaism with Moses and Christianity with Jesus and Islam with Muhammad and other faiths, those prophets were telling us it is about love and unity. Love and unity. They were basically all saying the same thing. What Baha'is believe is that what is different around all the manifestations is that the social teachings. So back when humanity was, let's say, in its kindergarten stage, our understanding of certain things was not as advanced as perhaps we are now in our adolescence. And so another tenet of the Baha'i faith is the equality of men and women. And we think about a past dispensation prior to the last 100 years, 200 years or so, when the Baha'i faith came into being. If a manifestation of God were to say, okay, equality of men and women, there were some folks and some cultures that weren't ready for that. Perhaps we're seeing that a little bit right now, if we look at some of the things that are happening around the world, and particularly in Iran with women. And so too early an expression of those kinds of teachings may have created more harm than good. So right now we are uplifting the oneness of humanity, the oneness of world religions, right? And the oneness of God. The equality of men and women. It's also that religion must be the cause of unity. If it's not the cause of unity, then there's teachings in the faith that perhaps we don't focus on religion. The Baha'i teachings also talk about the harmony of science and religion. Right now, there's a lot of folks who have experienced a lot of trauma. And so the mental health and well-being of many of our young people and some of us who are older as well is really in crisis mode. And there is now science. There's a scientist, she's a Jewish woman actually, by the name of Dr. Lisa Miller, who has studied the research on our brains, the neuroscience, that a proactive factor, preventative factor for depression and suicide and some mental illness, and a responsive factor when we're not feeling so mentally and emotionally well, is actually spirituality. Doesn't have to be religiosity, but spirituality. So whatever faith you have, something greater than yourself is something that's very, very healing. And so we now have the science along with some of the religion to balance things out. As I've talked about before, it's independent investigation of the truth. In the Baha'i faith, we have no clergy. And so no one is greater than or less than. We all are in consultation, accompany one another to an understanding. We absolutely have teachings directly from the manifestations of God, the Bab and Baha'u'llah, as well as Baha'u'llah's son, Abdul Baha, who is the perfect exemplar. And one of the things that attracted me to the Baha'i faith was I really wanted to know what God wanted for me in the 21st century. And I was raised Jewish, and culturally, more culturally than religiously, though I was bat mitzvahed when I was 13. I read from the Torah. I had a bat mitzvah on a Saturday. I wore a yarmulke, a head covering, and wore a talit. And back in the 1970s, that was a little bit unheard of across most of the Jewish traditions. And in the Baha'i faith, because of the equality of men and women, I look back at my bat mitzvah, my coming of age, and see that that was really present for me there. And my mom was someone who taught me from a young age that, you know, women have just the amount of rights as men, and we should bring ourselves to that station. So being raised Jewish, I had a curiosity. Perhaps maybe some of you have had a curiosity from your own upbringing. How come as a Jew, I was taught to believe that God only spoke to humanity once? And my understanding was Jesus was Jewish. And I just couldn't reconcile in my heart why we didn't believe in Jesus and that he was bringing the wisdom for that age. And so I kept seeking and looking for the answers in the Torah, which is one of the sacred traditions of the Jewish faith, the first 5 books of the Bible and the 5 books of Moses. And I would look in the text and God, what do you want for me in this life? And so I hope you can follow the bouncing ball as I share my story in the context of the faith. I want to share with you just a little bit of trauma in my life to help you understand why this faith, I'm on fire with this faith and the healing power. So when I was younger, when I was about 5, I experienced some abuse by a babysitter. I won't get into it, but as a result, I ate to protect myself, to numb my feelings of shame. That wasn't my shame. And so I basically cut myself off from the sunlight of the spirit. And I was made fun of. People bullied me. They called me Bahama Mama. They beat me up on the playground. And when I was in 3rd grade, my teacher, Mrs. O'Leary, loved me at a time when I felt unlovable. And my mother at that time, because of her own trauma, was at the beginning stages of her alcoholism. And as I was getting chubbier and chubbier, on my birthday, which is November 24th, the kickoff season to eating for some people who celebrate Thanksgiving, my mom took me into the bathroom and she said, "This year you're going to go on a diet." And she focused on my weight for the rest of her life. And so my lovability and the amount of weight, real or perceived, on my body was locked in right there. And my worthiness, growing up, I really felt that I had to get up earlier in the morning than most people just to breathe the same air as everyone else. And so I ended up marrying a man who had the disease of alcoholism as well, and found my way into 12-step programs, into Al-Anon for families of alcoholics, and into Overeaters Anonymous for people who struggled with eating disorders. And I've been in Al-Anon for 33 years and Overeaters Anonymous, free from binging, purging, and starving, for 25 years by the grace of God. And I felt that everybody could benefit from the 12 steps. And then when I was teaching kindergarten, I was, with much humility, honored as Disney's Outstanding Elementary Teacher of the Year. And it was that experience where I found out about the Baha'i faith. I was in a boat with the overall Disney Teacher of the Year, and I asked him what in his repertoire spoke to him the most. And David Vixie was very Christian, and he pulled out a little card with all the virtues on it and potential, and a website, virtuesproject.com. I went to the website, I saw all the virtues, I learned about the 5 strategies. I started using the strategies at home with my students, and I started reading the virtues cards and found out that the Virtues Project is not a Baha'i project, but the founders are Baha'is. And I was volunteering my time to the founders as director of education for 7 years, and under their tutelage was hearing more and more about the faith and about the writings. And a dear friend of mine also gave me a prayer book, and I started reading the prayers. So I just need to warn you, right, that if you choose to open up one of these prayer books, they're incredibly powerful and incredibly healing. And I just want to read a prayer from the beginning. And listen, see if it can resonate with you. Intone, O my servant, the verses of God that have been revealed by thee, as intoned by them who have drawn nigh unto him, that the sweetness of thy melody may kindle thine own soul and attract the hearts of all men. Whosoever reciteth in the privacy of his chamber the verses revealed by God, the scattering of angels of the Almighty shall scatter abroad the fragrance of the words uttered by his mouth, and shall cause to hear, and shall cause the heart of every righteous man to throb. Though he may at first remain unaware of its effect, yet the virtue of the grace vouchsafed unto him must needs sooner or later exercise its influence upon his soul. Thus have the mysteries of the revelation of God been decreed by virtue of the will of him who is the source of power and wisdom, Baha'u'llah. So the writings directly from God to Baha'u'llah are powerful and potent. I just want to share a couple more of these quotes. So, as we've already heard, what is the purpose of our life? When Abdu'l-Baha was asked, and he said to acquire the virtues. And it's not just to acquire the virtues, but to use them in service of others. So another quote, God is the helper of those souls whose aim is to serve humanity. So think about the virtues that you have and that you're developing. You know, these virtues are not necessarily developed in ease and comfort. Would you agree? Think of a gem, which is the metaphor for our virtues. This is really who we are. What is a gem? What is a diamond before it becomes a diamond? Coal. You've got it. What does coal have to go through in order to become this gem? Heat and pressure. Are you going through some heat and pressure right now? I know I'm going through some heat and pressure right now. And as we go through the heat and pressure, we're learning lessons, those teachable moments, and we're acquiring the virtues. So let's see some of the hard things. What have we learned? What has humanity learned over COVID? Unity, right? We are one people. With some of just the incredible painful experiences of the Podis, pupil of the eyes, there's a special station in the Baha'i faith for people of African descent, because it is through the pupil that the light comes through. And so I know for me, as a white woman of unearned privilege, there's more and more humility that I am learning. There is more and more tolerance. Tolerance meaning understanding and appreciating differences, right? There's more steadfastness, courage, compassion. And those virtues are not developed when things are easy peasy squeezy, right? And so next time you're going through something really challenging, you can say, oh, goody, 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 goody. I'm strengthening my virtues. We get to polish them on a regular basis. Now, there's also teachings that from Abdul Baha is look at me, follow me, be as I am. Remember Abdul Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah? He really is the perfect exemplar. First, we must look. We must be able to see virtues in action. So if everybody looks for the good in everyone else, you're going to be able to see virtues in action. There's another quote that if somebody has 9 poor qualities and 1 good one, we ignore the 9 and we focus on the 1 good one. What we focus on expands. Even turn that inward. What's one of your strength virtues? What's something that as people look or they go to describe you, they say you have a lot of that, right? For me, I know this is going to be a surprise to you. One of my strength virtues is enthusiasm. And that's great. Enthusiasm means God within. You know what? Sometimes it's not that great. And so I'm always continuing to strive and balance my enthusiasm. Sometimes I get to balance it with patience, not one of my strength virtues. Other times I get to balance it with moderation. I had to create this Padlet, probably going to be adding more and more things because I can't keep you in a room long enough to share with you when I want to share. And also with my enthusiasm, self-discipline. That's something that I'm really working on. And what I've come to understand is that those of us who've experienced some trauma, we may find it harder to call on self-discipline because we've been impacted and our prefrontal cortex, here's the science and religion balance, right? That prefrontal cortex where we do executive functioning, we're able to call on self-discipline. We need to take a breath. Everyone, I invite you to take a nice deep breath and let it out. And to slow down, to really get that oxygen up there so we can do our best thinking, so we can respond instead of react. The good news about us being here to develop our virtues and use them in service of others, it's a lifelong thing. And it can happen right up until the moment we take our last breath. In fact, I am going to a celebration of life of a dear soul, a dear Baha'i brother Will tonight, and was with him and accompanied him and his family as he took his last breath. And the virtues of his strength and his courage and his love and his devotion and his sacrifice to be present here as long as he could for his family was extraordinary. And to witness his wife, his mom, his children, and their love and their devotion and their courage and their strength and their steadfastness as they watched this radiant soul ascend to the heaven. And we believe in the Baha'i faith that our soul continues to live, that they're really in the next room. So angel high five to all of your beloveds who have passed on, and that in this physical realm, we are learning, building, strengthening our capacities, our virtues, so that we can use them here and also in the next world. There's other teachings about when we're in our mother's womb. Do you remember when you were in your mother's womb, right? And you're there and you're developing eyes and ears and hands and lungs and taste buds, all of that. And we're wondering, well, what on earth, literally, do I need all of these physical features for? Well, it was for when we were in this world. But my personal belief is that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. And if we all didn't look different, sound different, come from different places, have different color skin and different lived experiences, we really wouldn't have such a fruitful training ground to develop our virtues. Would you all agree? Just curious, right? And so now we're here developing our virtues to be able to use them in the next world. I have some other quotes I want to share with you. Remember, I said, I just want to know, God, what do you want me to do in this world? So here's another quote that I found from Baha'u'llah. And listen carefully to see if this is an invitation for your heart. Be generous in prosperity and thankful in adversity. Thankful in adversity. Be worthy of the trust of thy neighbor and look upon him with a bright and friendly face. Everybody take a moment to smile right now. Show that bright and friendly face. A joy and radiant countenance is also what we're asked to bring forward into humanity. And notice when we smile, we feel just a little bit more joyful, don't we? Okay, back to purposefulness and the rest of the quote. Be a treasure to the poor, an admonisher to the rich, an answerer of the cry of the needy, a preserver of the sanctity of thy pledge. Be fair in thy judgment and guarded in thy speech. Be unjust to no man and show all meekness to all men. Be as a lamp unto them that they walk in darkness, a joy to the sorrowful, a sea for the thirsty, a haven for the distressed, an upholder and defender of victims of oppression. Let integrity and uprightness distinguish all thine acts. Be a home for the stranger, a balm to the suffering, a tower of strength for the fugitive. Be eyes to the blind and a guiding light unto the feet of the erring. Be an ornament to the countenance of truth, a crown to the brow of fidelity, a pillar of the temple of righteousness, a breath of life to the body of mankind, an ensign of hosts of justice, a luminary above the horizon of virtue, a dew to the soul of the human heart, an ark on the ocean of knowledge, a sun in the heaven of bounty, a gem on the diadem of wisdom, a shining light in the firmament of thy generation, a fruit upon the tree of humility. Okay, that's a tall order. Tall order. Don't worry, I put that into the Padlet so you can read it and you can practice it. And here's another quote, because how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Well, that's the same way that we develop our virtues. In the Bahá'í faith, we are taught to take ourselves to account each day. We get to look at all the virtues, we get to reflect. And so there's another quote from Baha'u'llah. Let each morn be better than its eve, and each morrow richer than its yesterday. Man's merit lieth in service and virtue, and not in the pageantry of wealth and riches. So I had a boyfriend in college, and this was his saying: the one who dies with the most toys wins. Is that true? No, ixnay on that. That's from the old material world, right? The one who dies, who have developed their virtues and used them in service of humanity, is the one that wins. And it's not a competition. It's just for our own competition. I put on the Padlet a talk by another Baha'i, Tom Price. Any of you all know Tom? Oh my goodness. I encourage you, if you are seeking, if you are curious, and even if you've been a Baha'i forever and ever and ever, amen. There's a talk that Tom did, and he basically made the metaphor of acquiring our virtues and this life as a game. And he connected it with many different sports, and it was just extraordinary. So really, at the end of the game, here are the points. How many virtues have you racked up? And so, rubbing your hands together, everyone, in honesty, talking, and not being interactive is tricky for me. So, rubbing your hands together, rubbing, and then just open up your hands. What gift of virtue do you see? What's the first one that comes to your mind? Perhaps that's a strength, right? I see humanity. When I look at everybody here, look at you radiant souls. Just beauty, unity in diversity is another big focus of the Baha'i faith. So I'm looking at the time, and I could go on and on and on and on. I think I'm going to come to a close in just a couple minutes. So thank you for practicing your patience and your perseverance. Probably should have started with the definition of virtue, but here it is. Virtues are universal, positive qualities of character, and we all have them inside of us, all of them in potential in varying degrees. So celebrate. And for those of you like me who got misinformation that we were less than something noble, we're all noble, everybody, right? And if we knew and we could act on our nobility and see that in everybody else, could you imagine what the world would be like? Just imagine that. So that's a striving, right? And virtues are found in all religions, in all cultures, in all faith traditions and sacred texts. In the Jewish faith, they're called the midot, right? In Christianity, maybe they're the fruits of the Spirit. Virtues have also been called the hierarchy of angels. I'm wondering what you all call virtues. We can actually ask the virtue, the angels of patience, steadfastness. We can say prayers to invite us to be able to embody those virtues. So powerful. All right, now here is, I think I'm gonna end with this quote. I know we're gonna have a song, but some of you might be going, okay, virtues, that's a lot. That's a lot to be able to develop our virtues, use them in service of others. I read that long quote from Baha'u'llah about how he wants us to live our life. It's a tall order. Well, here's your one day at a time pass. Listen, it's just strive. Strive that your actions day by day may be beautiful prayers. Turn towards God and seek always to do that which is right and noble. Enrich the poor, raise the fallen, comfort the sorrowful, bring healing to the sick, reassure the fearful, rescue the oppressed, bring hope to the hopeless, shelter the destitute. And I'm going to go back to the opening line. It's just strive. Strive that your actions day by day may be beautiful prayers. And so with that, one final quote is never enough. So I am going to take the liberty to read one last. And this is actually about joy. And I'm going to put on my little Andy Grammer hat because I want you to remember always joy, 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 even when things are challenging. Joy gives us wings. In times of joy, our strength is more vital, our intellect keener, and our understanding less clouded. We seem better able to cope with the world and find our sphere of influence. That's also from Abdul Baha. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn the talking piece back over to you all, and I'll be happy to answer any questions, just remembering personal investigation of truth. I'm a baby Baha'i, keep it easy.
Thank you. That was really interesting. Thank you for sharing your own story, and that was very moving. Thank you. So everyone can put their questions in the chat if you have any. I'll start off with something that I was thinking about. So in some religions, specifically I'm thinking of Christianity, like there's a debate between whether someone can have virtue through knowledge and faith or through action. And a lot of the quotes you were reading was about action and striving to serve. So would you say in the Baha'i faith, you think virtues are more of like an active thing you can acquire rather than just knowing?
Absolutely. Thank you for your thoughtfulness, asking the question and sharing the answer with me, right? We study. And so as Baha'is, we don't have rituals. We do have a daily obligatory prayer. So we can either say a long one sometime as the sun is up. There's a short one or a short one during the day. We can say a medium size 3 times during the day, or oh my goodness, or a long obligatory prayer anytime. And so we are also told that we need to read the writings. And so we read the writings when we wake up and when we go to sleep. So that's the study part, right? But, faith without action, we're not doing the service, right? And so it really is in the doing. And part of the doing might even be seeing and acknowledging somebody for their generosity of time, being on a fireside in the middle of a beautiful afternoon, or encouraging them. What's going to help you to be steadfast and keep striving without giving up, right? So some of that action might even just be noticing. And then how do we really learn and how do we really embody? It's by the doing. So thank you for that thoughtful question. And remember, personal investigation, I could be absolutely wrong and be lying to you. I'm not going to lie to you on purpose, because truthfulness is the foundation of all human virtues. That's also from Baha'u'llah. But, just sometimes, who knows? Okay, keep going.
Thank you. I guess, okay, I have another one while we're waiting. How would you say someone can cultivate a virtue they think they're lacking in? Do you think it's better to focus on it a lot or not focus on it? Or I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
So that's a really great question. So for me, my kind of entry into the virtues, I knew I was going to do this. My entry into the Baha'i faith was the Virtues Project. Well, two of the three founders, Linda Cavlin Popoff and John Cavlin, their father, Baro Cavlin, was one of the first of the 9 Universal House of Justice members. And then Dr. Dan Popoff, Linda's husband, is a scholar of the world's sacred traditions. And they created the Virtues Project, which is just 5 strategies for bringing out the best in ourselves and others. And one of the ways that was kind of my on-ramp to deepening in the virtues and to even knowing that I had them was reading the virtues cards. So on the virtues cards, and I put some in the Padlet, it basically gives a description of what that virtue looks like. And then on the back, there's a quote and how to practice it. So I would read how to practice it. And I would read, and at first I thought they were flashcards. And you can take this just from the writings too. Any prayers, doesn't even have to be in the Baha'i faith. Take your favorite prayer. And it's not just something to memorize, but to embody and to ask ourselves, what is it? How can it be practiced? How can I practice it? Am I practicing it? Right? So it is an ongoing, and I think journaling can really, really help us. And so each birthday, I randomly pick a virtue and focus on that to really strengthen over the year. And every morning, I also do a virtues pick. And it's one way to study and to practice it. So at the end of the day, as we take ourselves to account to reflect, how did this virtue show up? Was there an opportunity for it to show up today? Did I call on it or did I choose not to? When I was teaching kindergarten, my students and I would read a virtue every day. We would talk about how this might be helpful for us as we went about our day. We would look for it in each other and say, I see your self-discipline, raising your hand patiently and waiting to be called on, right? And at the end of the day, my little 5-year-olds would go knee to knee and they would talk about, hey, did this virtue come up? Did you see it in others? Do we have an opportunity to practice it? Did we miss our opportunity? When we get ready to go home, what's it going to look like? And it becomes a practice of looking for it within us and doing it and reflecting. Hope that answered that question.
Yes, thank you. The next question is, how do you envision the concept of heaven and hell in connection to acquiring virtues?
Okay, so that's a great question. Again, personal investigation. So I know for me, when I'm not using my virtues is hell. I'm just saying. I'll give you an example. Detachment. Detachment doesn't mean not caring. Doesn't mean like moving away from. It actually means, turning over, trusting God, and allowing others to have their own spiritual lessons. It's, thinking and feeling to make smart choices kind of thing. But when I'm in there and I'm super attached to something, or my ego, which is stealing this from the 12-step rooms, edging God out, and I'm detached, I'm attached to something, then I could be heartbroken. So I'm creating my own hell. That's just an example, right? And when I am doing God's work and I'm open to the lessons of spirit and I'm calling on my virtues, I'm going to the writings, I'm seeing virtues in others instead of taking people's inventory. The energy that I bring is so much, it's heavenly energy, right? It's angelic realm. It's a concourse on high is with me. And then when it's our lower nature, and we do have lower and higher nature, right? Our higher nature, the virtues, lower nature is the cardinal, like material realm. When I forget that I am really a spiritual being, then it's hell on earth, right? And And when I remember that we are spiritual beings having a physical experience and that these virtues are gifts that we get to use in service of others, then life is really beautiful and it is heavenly, even when things are really hard. Does that make sense? That's just my own personal belief.
Thank you. Yep, that makes sense. What approaches have you found to be effective in introducing the faith to Jewish people?
You know, that's a really thoughtful question. And I think it's really approaches that are helpful to introduce the faith to anyone. We don't proselytize in the Baha'i faith, right? There's basically, actually, I do have one more quote that I'm going to share that addresses this question. Ye must conduct yourself in such a manner that ye may stand out, distinguished and brilliant as the sun among other souls. Should any one of you enter a city, he should become a center of attraction by reason of his sincerity, his faithfulness and love, his honesty and fidelity, his truthfulness and loving kindness towards all the people of the world, so that the people that's in that city may cry out and say, this man is unquestionably a Baha'i. And that's a quote from Abdul Baha. And so I think that it's really sharing my understanding of the faith, sharing the quotes, being the virtues, living the virtues. The irony of this is I declared a Baha'i the weekend that my synagogue, which I love, right? I was not looking to change teams. I tell you, for me, the Baha'i faith is Judaism 4.0, right? We got Moses, we got Jesus, we got Muhammad. Some people say it's 5.0 because we got the Bab and then Baha'u'llah, right? But so, and I even went to my rabbi, and as I was seeking, and he said, oh, that Bob, he's got it going on. Like my rabbi had heard of the Baha'i faith. And it must have been that he started sharing, or somebody in Judaism started sharing, that I was thinking about shifting my loyalty, not really, but changing teams, as I like to call it, which I didn't really change teams because you don't give up being something, right? I didn't give up being Jewish. What happened was now all of the manifestations of God were accessible to my heart. They're all saying the same thing, love and unity. Anyways, people started sending me quotes from Jewish sacred traditions, and they didn't land on my heart as the writings from Baha'u'llah, Abdul Baha, Shoghi Effendi, the guardian of the faith. And so I could acknowledge, and I can share quotes, right? But it's not about converting anybody. I just get to share in friendships, in true, authentic, and this is the key, in true, authentic, meaningful friendships, my experience, strength, and hope of becoming a Baha'i, and that I didn't give up being Jewish. I now am able to really access Judaism, the teachings at a deeper level, and more teachings of the manifestations of God. I hope that made sense.
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
How can we encourage virtues and unity with all the political strife going on in the US now?
And I love the enthusiasm with that exclamation point. My husband always makes fun of me. I know you're listening, Dave, because I use a lot of exclamation points. Here again, going back to the quote and the POTIs, we are one race. We are one race. It's the human race. That's it. And balancing science and religion, science shows that we're human race. And OPS, guess where humanity started? I know you all know, in Africa, right? Ethiopia. So we're basically all of African descent. So I think we better like own up and understand that. So that's one piece, right? The common humanity. And in the Baha'i faith, we do not participate in partisan politics, right? And doesn't mean that we don't vote, right? We honor the rules, the boundaries, the norms of the country with which we live. We're also not about nationalism, right? Because we do believe that it's one race and one human family, and that these lines are somewhat arbitrary. Why is like Maryland here and Pennsylvania there? Like, who said? Anyways, I'm gonna stay focused on your question. So I think sharing quotes, right? And getting curious, not furious. Thank you to my mentor, Linda Kavlin Popoff, with that line, getting curious, not furious. And to have elevated conversations with hearts open to ask not why questions, but what. What is it about this particular point of view or this candidate that resonates with you so? And really want to learn, right? And before, if you're going to share your perspective or a quote, because I think that the writings have so much potency that when we can use the creative word right there, that there's magic and power in that, that will be helpful instead of using our own language. But we've got to listen and hear first with our hearts and our ears. Acknowledge that we heard. And acknowledgement doesn't mean that we agree. And then ask permission to offer a different perspective, something to consider, right? Loving unity.
Thank you. This question is, I don't know if you can speak to it, but in my village, people ask, what does the Baha'i faith say about the death of Jesus?
And so I'm not necessarily, don't know if I understand your question, but the death meaning his being put on the cross, his arising. One thing is that all the manifestations of God, they have many things in common. One thing is that they suffered. They went through incredible suffering, right? So Jesus died. Christianity, Jesus died for our sins, right? Jesus, and then if we think about the Bab was murdered. And in fact, what happened was, jump in, anybody correct me if I'm telling the story wrong. The Bab was arrested with a young man, put in a cell, and then was brought out with all of these soldiers to just murder him with hundreds of bullets, right? And so when the bullets were fired and the smoke cleared, he was gone. And where was the Bab? He was back in his cell, continuing this teaching or a teaching. And when he was done, he told the guards that he was ready, right? So how do you endure all those bullets? Basically, he kind of rose again for just a little bit of time to finish a little bit of teaching. Remember, personal investigation, right? And then he ascended to the next realm.
How do you introduce the Virtues Project to others?
Okay, well, one of my favorite quotes. Remember, the Virtues Project's not Baha'i, it's Baha'i inspired, but it really honors all world religions. And then in schools, there's no religiosity. So here is hidden word number 82. Oh, my servant, the best of men are they that earn a livelihood by their calling and spend upon themselves and upon their kindred for the love of God, the Lord of all worlds. When I was in the shrine and whenever I pray, Baha'u'llah, what is my path of service? What is my path of service? The answer is always the Virtues Project. And that is really the only reason why I'll share a little bit about the Virtues Project because this is a Baha'i fireside, and I feel like work is worship, so that's okay too. And the Virtues Project is my work, is my vocation. It really is my calling in life. So I'm good with that. How do I share the Virtues Project? Well, my husband and I started a nonprofit called Virtues Matter, right? And so we have the honor of doing work around the world. I love talking about the Virtues Project because it's the 5 strategies that was like the 12 steps for me and continues my own healing, and I get to bring it primarily into schools. I told you about those virtues cards that really saved my life. So I was a technology specialist in the 90s. Let's wipe off the dust cobwebs from there. And so we have an app called Virtues Cards. Not trying to sell anybody anything, but I really need to have the virtues in the palm of my hand. So we have them. And at any moment, oh, mercy. Hope y'all were going to have mercy on me right now with this answer, right? So we can share the project with the app. We have a website. I love to do workshops, especially for educators, right? And we're doing work around community leadership. My husband's now partnering with me. My kids are facilitators. We're doing stuff in medicine, working in, anyways, if somebody's interested in that, the introduction to the Virtues Project, call me or reach out to me. I'm going to put my number in the chat box because, yeah, we can save that for another time. I hope you're okay with that. I appreciate your understanding.
I think those are all of our questions. So thank you so much. This was really uplifting, energizing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm going to be assertive here and take the last word.
Go for it.
Here's the deal. And this is what I want you to remember. Every moment is a virtues moment. Repeat that after me, loud and proud. Every moment is a virtues moment. And the more mindful we are of them, the more mindful we are of them, the more easily we can access them. The more easily we can access them. Remember, strive day by day. It's just a striving. And you have all the virtues that you need in potential. See them in yourself first, then in others. Thank you, everybody, for your generosity of time and spirit and your service. So much love and gratitude.
Thank you so much. So our speaker next week will be Ms. Christine Muller, and she'll be talking about addressing climate change from a spiritual perspective. So these are every Saturday at noon Eastern time. And I will put the link to our contact form and our YouTube channel, and I'll put the presentation that was referenced today as well. And we'll go ahead and end with a Baha'i quotation set to music.
Strive that your actions day by day may meet beautiful prayers.
Strive that your actions day by day may be beautiful prayers. Turn towards God and seek always to do that which is right and noble. Enrich the poor, raise the fallen, comfort the sorrowful, bring healing to the sick, reassure the fearful, rescue the oppressed, bring hope to the hopeless, shelter the destitute. Strive that your actions day by day may be beautiful prayers. Turn towards God and seek always to do that which is right and noble. Enrich the poor, raise the fallen, comfort the sorrowful, bring healing to the sick, reassure the fearful, rescue the oppressed, bring hope to the hopeless, shelter the destitute. Strive that your actions day by day may be beautiful prayers. Turn towards God and seek always to do that which is right and noble. Enrich the poor, raise the fallen, comfort the sorrowful, bring healing to the sick, reassure the fearful, rescue the oppressed, bring hope to the hopeless, shelter the destitute. Strive that your actions day by day may be beautiful prayers. Turn towards God and seek always to do that which is right and noble. Enrich the poor, raise the fallen, comfort the sorrowful, bring healing to the sick, reassure the fearful, rescue the oppressed, bring hope to the hopeless, shelter the destitute. Strive.
Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Be well, super grateful.